This episode is sponsored by Ridge. Still carrying around your crusty, overstuffed old leather wallet? It's time for an upgrade. Ridge wallets can take your wallet game to the next level. They're sleek, minimalist, and made of premium, high-performance materials like carbon fiber, titanium, and stainless steel. Plus, a Ridge wallet is the best way to protect your credit and debit cards with built-in RFID blocking technology to stop digital pickpockets in their tracks. So what are you waiting for? Get up to 40% off at ridge.com/command. Just head to ridge.com/command to see their biggest sale of the year.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and today joining me is special guest Gaurav Gulati.
Hello, hi.
We are upgrading the brand new Precons from Tarkir Dragonstorm. We're kicking things off with the Sultai Arisen deck. It's predictably Sultai. It's blue, it's green, it's black. It cares about the graveyard, as many Sultai decks do.
Yes, and zombies.
Yummy. It's my favorite. It's like a new, I have a Sultai Sidisi deck, so this is like exactly my wheelhouse.
Nice, yes.
Excited to be back here. So today we're going to be talking about what comes in the pre-constructed deck if you buy it off the shelf. And then we're going to tell you 10 cards you can add to it and 10 cards to take out to get it in peak fighting shape for your next game night. We'll use a budget of $50 and you'll have the Precon that's only about $45, hopefully.
In this economy?
I don't know. We'll see what you can find it for.
Yeah.
If you want to pick up this Precon or any of the singles that we talk about here today, go over to cardkingdom.com/command and you'll be supporting the show while you shop. Card Kingdom has an enormous selection of Magic cards, especially these days when there's so many different versions of every card and there's so many different printings and conditions that you want. It's nice to be able to shop from a place that has a ton of different options. You can get exactly the card that you're looking for, and you can trust that Card Kingdom is going to ship it to you safely and soundly. They're pros over there. They know how to ship cardboard across the country, so it's not going to get damaged in the mail. Got to keep your stuff safe when you travel. We trust Card Kingdom, and you can too, and support the show while you shop by going to cardkingdom.com/command. While you're in your shopping zone, you can go to ultrapro.com/command and support the show as well. UltraPro has the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. They've got sleeves and deck boxes, binders, cards hoarders, dice, everything that you need to be a well-accessorized Magic player. They have the officially licensed art from Magic. If you have one card in particular that you want to show off, you can get their new one-touch case products. They're a stand in plastic, and you can put a card in there and it's magnetic and put it on your shelf. I want to buy like a set of them for all of my commanders and then have like all my commanders in a slot on a shelf.
You could have an art gallery. People come check out my decks. In a tiny closet.
Yeah, because I do a lot of altars and stuff, so it's cool to like be able to show off the specific ones. They're really cool, and if you shop with them, you're supporting the show. So go to ultrapro.com/command. It goes a long way. And if you want to support the show directly, go to patreon.com/commandzone for access to extra turns and game nights a day early without ads. All of our gameplay available a day early. You can help us do some quality control. Some of our patrons will like get in the comments and be like, I don't know if you noticed, but like this animation looks a little weird. And you're like, it does look a little weird.
We can fix it.
We
Thank
can
you.
fix it. So come be a part of our quality control team. Help us out. And you get access to exclusive content at certain tiers. Turn Talk is a conversation we have after every game of Extra Turns where we just laugh about the game and say what we would have done if we drawn one more card or had one more turn, what you liked and didn't like about how your deck performed. It's a ton of fun. You get to know the guests and the players even more.
Yeah, honestly, it's a good framework I recommend doing this at your home game sometimes. Like have a 5-minute conversation like, how'd that feel? Because you have a pregame. And I think a postgame is also very helpful, especially with a pod that gets together often.
Yeah, you even just being like, hey, you got to play that new card. That was really cool is a ton of fun to hear that conversation. So go to patreon.com/commandzone. You can support the show. And we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode. And this one is dedicated to Mooney Wallace. Mooney Wallace, you rock.
Rock.
Very fun. All right, we're getting into it. We're talking about the Sultai Arisen Precon. This deck is sweet and has got a lot of cool things going on. We're, of course, going to upgrade it eventually. We're going to add 10 cards. We're going to take 10 cards out. But before we make any changes to this deck, we have to get to know what is in the box off the shelf.
Yes.
And what better way to get to know them by meeting the face commander?
Taval, the balance scale is a 1, a black, and a green, and a blue. 1 in Sultai, basically. So 4 mana. For a legendary creature, Spirit Dragon, it is a 4/4 with flying. And it says, whenever Taval attacks, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And then it also says, whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. Druid is a strange addition there, but it's a 2/2 zombie.
They're zombie druids?
Yeah, they're druids.
Whoa.
There's a whole theme of druids happening in this, I was going to say season of Cons of Tarkir, but it's not a season. But yeah, this arc of the story is, there's some druid stuff happening. It's pretty cool.
I love when zombies have jobs.
Yeah, yeah. Give more zombies jobs.
Yeah, my question is always, did they get that job before they died or after they died? Like, did
interesting.
they go back to school?
Yeah, interesting. Huh, that's a good question. I feel like they probably got it after because they're still 2/2. They didn't get a keyword.
Yeah,
they don't do much more than regular zombies. So,
They're like, if I'm gonna be dead, I might as well do something with it myself.
Attack for 2.
Yeah. So this is sweet. This is a self-mill deck that has sort of, I would assume, a lands sub theme.
Yeah, it definitely does have that a little bit. I feel like it's not exactly built around the land sub theme. It's more built around. Definitely around the mill, and you want to add on to that as we'll talk about later. But yeah, the commander itself is flying 4/4. You're probably going to get in for some damage. You'll get to mill, you get to bring a land back. So you'll basically give half your commander tax every time you do an attack.
Every time you
which
get
is
to
awesome.
attack. Yeah.
And you'll make some zombies, so you'll have some blockers. Which is great.
This is like the first time, it's not the first legend that we've seen the whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard clause.
Yeah.
Like it was on Tormod.
Yes.
Was the last time we saw it. But this is the first one that it feels like it got a real dedicated commander to this archetype that people have been, I think, sort of clamoring for years. Like the Desecrated Tomb question. It's just like, I want to play it.
Yeah.
Where
can I do it?
So it's cool to have a commander that actively cares about it.
Yes, yeah. This commander doing both things in one card is very powerful and very cool. So excited to see it.
All right, let's meet the back of Commander. This is Kotis Sibsig Champion. Black, green, and a blue for a 3/3 zombie warrior. And it has 2 lines of text. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard by exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. So it sort of gives them like escape.
Yeah, basically.
Whenever 1 or more creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from a graveyard or is cast from a graveyard, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Kotis. So Kotis is 3 mana and lets you cast creatures from your graveyard as long as you've milled enough.
Right.
And then it gets bigger for the trouble.
Right, exactly. It doesn't mill on itself, which is a little sad. If you were going to make this your main commander, you would have to have a lot of mill backup to get to do something fun with it by turn 4 or whatever when you get to actually do the stuff with it.
Yeah, this is interesting. So they're clearly both like graveyard decks.
Yes.
And this one I would expect is heavily creature-y.
Yes.
Like you would want the number as high as possible just to be able to have maximum options to cast with your commander. And then I probably want like sacrifice abilities or that kind of thing.
Yeah, it feels like maybe you could do some sort of, you're probably going to cast other creatures, but maybe you could do some sort of Voltron-y thing with it because it does get bigger,
big.
But it has no evasion, so you'll have to really work on that part too. But it's possible. I'm sure someone out there will craft it and make it awesome.
Okay, so those are the 2 commanders of this deck. We're clearly doing some graveyard shenanigans. We're bringing things out of our graveyard, and a lot by the looks of these 2 commanders. Before we get into any of the mechanical details of this deck, we always like to talk about the financial statistics of this deck. So we're going to talk about the reprint value, a couple of caveats. All of these numbers are taken at time of recording. This is before this list is spoiled. So these reprint values are going to be higher than you are seeing on your screen, but we take them all at the sort of the same time. So it's a relative reprint value compared to other precons, not literal reprint value, like value you're getting in your hands. when you announce reprints, the value goes down. That's how reprints work.
Yeah.
And this value is only including the 73 reprints in the deck. It doesn't include any of the basics, the 10 new cards, or the 2 main set cards that are in the box. And these decks are currently MSRPing for $45. We don't know what that number is going to do. It could go up once we know the reprint value. It could stay the same. It really depends on where you purchase or at what time you order these decks. Okay, all of that out of the way. The total reprint value for this deck is... I'll let you do the honors.
$166.75.
What? That's huge.
That's triple the value.
I mean, all of these precons are like really, really high reprint value. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
But this is a banger. $166 is like, for reference, over the average reprint value of 2024, which was only $137.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. And like we said, this does not count the new cards in the deck. So if one of the cards in the deck actually blows up that's new, this will balloon to maybe $20, $30 more. Who knows? Like, it's possible.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm very excited that there's so much value in these decks, especially because people are so excited about them. We started doing some different numbers after the actual MSRPs of Precon started to vary. We started taking a bang for your buck value where we take the reprint value and we divide it by MSRP to give you an idea of like how much reprint value are you getting for your $1 American dollar spent.
Okay.
And this one, the bang for your buck value is $3.71 worth of reprints for your $1 cash.
It's almost a booster pack.
That's sweet. That's a huge amount. And that is also well above average for 2024, which was $2.75.
Wow.
You're right. The reprint value in this deck is high compared to reprints in the past, which is very exciting. But that's a bird's eye view. Let's zoom in and see what actual cards you're getting for your money.
Yeah, so there are 11 notable reprints in here that are $5 or more. The first one is, and I was actually surprised to see that this one is so expensive. I think it might just be a rarity thing. It hasn't been printed very often.
I agree.
This is Obnixilis the Fallen. This is a legendary creature demon for 3 and a black, 2 black. It has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may have target player lose 3 life. If you do, put 3+1/+1 counters on Obnixilis, and he's a 3/3. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. He's a 3/3 and gets bigger.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great payoff for lands decks.
Yeah.
And it's a nice reprint to see here.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense with Tival, the face commander. It makes significantly less sense with Kotis, the backup commander. But that has been the trend for these decks lately.
Right, yes. Quite good, and I did not know it was trending to $17.
That's bananas.
That's wild.
This next one is sitting at $12. It's Command Beacon. So sacrifice it to put your commander from your command zone into your hand, just to get around that commander tax a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome because I think this commander, like a lot of good commanders that do everything the deck wants to do, will be a lightning rod.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's good to have. Next one is Crypt of Agadine.
I love this card.
This is a land. It enters tapped, but you can tap it for a single black mana, or 2 and tap. You can add black for each black creature card in your graveyard. Now, in a Graveyard Matters deck where you're milling often large amounts of cards, this could get quite out of hand. Now, you are in 3 colors, so it won't be as profitable as, say, a mono black deck, but it's still quite good. Like, if you can tap this and get, 5, 6 mana, that's awesome. That's great.
Anytime you have a land that nets you more than 1 mana it means it's very powerful. I've run that in Sidisi for years, and it's very good there.
Yeah.
Up next is a big reprint sitting at only $12, and it got a shiny new art. It's Life from the Loam.
Love to see it.
If you've played against Loam, you know it. If you haven't, then you don't. But it's a return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand and dredge 3. So this is actually very cool with the face commander because Life from the Loam, the card, removes itself from the graveyard repeatedly.
Yes.
And then itself removes other cards from the graveyard.
Yes.
So it is a loop of zombies with Tival.
Yes. Also notable in this deck is that there's a card called Afterlife from the Loam.
That's fun.
So, they had to put Life from the Loam into it, too.
They did.
Which is awesome. I love that.
Life from the Loam.
We love that. Next one is a little guy. It's Hedron Crab.
I can't believe how expensive this card is.
Yeah, this is $11 for an uncommon? What's happening?
I mean, a huge reprint.
Yeah, but you would not expect it if you had opened this originally when it came out. But it is a 1-mana creature, crab. It's a 0/2 that reads Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, target player mills 3 cards. Seems quite simple, but in a deck that is often bringing out extra lands because of your commander's ability, and if you play as turn 1, you start playing fetch lands, like it gets out of hand, you mill tons of cards, and it's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, Hedron Crab is perfect in decks like this. It's so cheap. It's a great part of the engine. It's exactly what you want, the kind of reprint you want in a deck like this.
Yes.
The next one is sitting at $10. It's Dauthi Voidwalker. Black for a Dauthi Rogue. It's a 3/2 with Shadow. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a void counter on it. Then you can sacrifice Dauthi to choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it, and you can play that card this turn without paying its mana cost. So it lets you steal stuff from them.
Yes, which is great. So oftentimes if your opponent plays a removal spell, you'll get the chance to play it from this card later. At one time, just because it gets void counters and then you can cast it for free by sacking it. But usually that's a small cost. It's an odd inclusion in this deck. We're happy to see a reprint of any card that's this valuable. It's an odd inclusion in this deck because it doesn't use your graveyard in any way that makes it beneficial for your commander. It's all obviously a very good card to have.
I mean, I guess like you can bring it back repeatedly and use it multiple times is sort of the idea, but you're not like milling your opponents really.
No, not really. No, you would always like with Hedron Crab, you'd always choose yourself. You always want to mill your yard. So this is an odd one, but we're happy to see a Dauthi Voidwalker.
It is just a good card.
Yeah.
Also sitting at $10, a big chonky boy. It's Lord of Extinction.
Yeah.
It's 3, a black, and a green for a star elemental. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in all graveyards. It big.
It big and very, very good in graveyard decks. Most of the time when you're bringing back creatures or using the star to like cheat some sort of weird thing. I love this card Mimeoplasm because it counts its power wherever it is.
That's cool.
So it's often going to be just exiled for a different purpose, but it's great to have in the deck. The next one here is Conduit of Worlds.
Nice.
This one's awesome. It is a 2 and a green, 4 mana for an artifact that reads, you may play lands from your graveyard.
Nice.
So it's a conduit of
Crucible.
Crucible of Worlds already. And then it has an activate ability that says, tap, choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast additional spells this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. It has a lot of clauses in there, but basically says you get to cast a card from your graveyard that's a non-land permanent once per turn. And then nothing else, don't do anything else. You've done too much. This is too good. But the lands part is awesome. Like we any deck that's milling yourself, if this is a great way to get consistent land drops.
And whenever you play a land out of your graveyard, you trigger your commander, you get a zombie druid. It's an easy way to start getting value from your graveyard without spending any additional mana. Yeah. One of my favorites is $7 right now. My gosh, it's Phyrexian Reclamation. Single black for an enchantment with an activated ability. 1 and a black, pay 2 life. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Great. Triggers your commander. Lets you loop little sacrifice creatures like Dauthi. So like this is a good thing with Dauthi, but it is a weird thing.
It's always weird seeing Phyrexian stuff in other decks, but this is just a very good card in all black decks, basically, that are playing any sort of creature value thing. But
I love this card. Even if it's just like they kill your commander again, you're like, I'll send it to the graveyard, I'll get it back. And you do pay a little commander tax, but it is separate and it doesn't stack up.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's really good.
It's quite worth it. Next one here is Gerard. Golgari Lichlord.
Oh, yeah.
Black, green, 4 mana, exact colored pips. A legendary creature, zombie elf. Gerard gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. Then it has an activated ability that reads 1 black, green, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to the sacrifice creature's power.
You're going to fling that big chunky
Lord
boy,
of Extinction.
Lord of Extinction.
Now, that's why these guys are best friends, yes. It has another activated ability that says sacrifice a swamp and a forest. Return this card from your graveyard to your hand, which means it will activate your commander and, give you value for that. This is an amazing card in this deck. A little harder to cast with the mana that is exact pips, but, eventually when you're pulling so many lands out of your graveyard, it probably will be a non-issue.
I would assume this deck is largely Golgari.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much right about that. Yeah. The blue is definitely there, but all the graveyard shenanigans are a very Golgari thing, so it makes sense. Great card to see.
Finally, we've got a Living Death that's sitting at $5 and essential for decks like these. Always nice to see that reprinted. So those are the financial stats. It's time to break down the mechanical stats. We want to talk about what the deck actually does, which means it's time for the stats.
I just thought it was a lightning bolt.
Yeah, that's the letters just falling
over.
Oh,
yeah. They've done a lot of work.
So we're going to break down the nuts and bolts of this deck, everything that's in there that make it work. We're going to talk about the stuff that goes in every commander deck and then break down the stuff that is unique to this deck. First, we're going to use the new template that we released a couple of weeks back. If you haven't watched that, give it a shot. We updated the numbers for the modern era, and we will be comparing this Precon to those new numbers. So, first things first is ramp.
16 pieces of ramp. We love to see it. We
That is
love
a
to see a lot
lot.
of ramp. It's a lot of ramp, but it is a graveyard deck that wants, there's some big top end stuff that you could get into play without cheating it into play. And so I think more ramp in a graveyard deck is always good. Yeah, 16 ramp is a lot, but it also gives you options for cutting if you think, whoa, this is way too much ramp.
I mean, it makes sense to me for like you have a commander who ramps, but when I have a 4-mana commander, I'm usually trying to get him down on turn 3, so you need a higher density of 2-mana ramp.
Yes.
I'm not sure specifically if that is the case. For this
Farseek
one,
is in the deck. I believe there's a rampant growth also.
I saw a couple of 2-mana ramp cards going on, so that may be why this number is high.
Yes.
Up next is a little low. This is card advantage. These are specifically cards that you spend 1 to net positive cards.
Yeah, only 5 of these in the deck. So it's a little low on that, and you could definitely use a little more card advantage in this.
I think having the low card advantage here is likely a byproduct of having so much like dedicated self-mill, which also counts as card advantage in these kinds of decks.
Sure.
You can't count them fully as card advantage spells, but we'll talk about how many the deck has in a little bit here.
Yeah, oftentimes you consider your graveyard almost a second hand that's just kind of off to the side that you can access as a graveyard player. So
I think 5 is a little low, but it looks a lot better when we start talking about self-mill.
Yes.
Up next is targeted disruption. So these are, you spend 1 card to answer 1 card, and this one only has 6 in the deck.
Yeah, you could definitely use more of this in the deck as well. But yeah, you could definitely use more of those to kind of even out the play space with everybody else, because everyone else is probably going to play the other commanders in this set, and I'm sure they do very yucky things too.
Yeah, I like to be a little higher on the targeted disruption. On average, we recommend like even as high as 12.
Yeah, so double this.
Just to guarantee that you like have access to the interaction when you need it. Up next is mass disruption, also low on this one. There's only 4 pieces of mass disruption. Remember, that's not as simple as just board wipes. That could include like mass goad or destroy all artifacts and enchantments, or like tap down all your opponent's creatures, that kind of stuff. Anytime you spend 1 card to deal with multiple cards is when we start counting things as mass disruption.
Yes.
So it's definitely low on the disruption categories. That means it's not prioritizing interacting with its opponents as much.
Yeah.
Finally is lands. There are 37 lands in this deck, 15 basic, 12 of them come in tapped.
That is quite a bit. And remember that your commander does put lands into play tapped as well, so that's kind of like an offset of like, well, I was going to come into play tapped anyways, might as well put this land in that comes into play tapped.
So I wanted to mention how I did the tapped lands, just so it's clear people aren't going through the list and being like, there aren't. I counted any land that could come in untapped and could come in tapped as half a land.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, or as like half a tapped land.
Sure.
So a check land with that like comes in tapped, untapped if you have a swamp or a forest.
Right.
Would be half a tapped land.
Right. So woodland cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yes.
So it's not literally 12, but it is a sizable portion of the lands could come in tapped if you're not meeting stipulations.
Got it.
And there are a number of tapped, like fully tapped lands in the deck as well. But I'm not super concerned about the 12 tapped land number. 37 lands I do think is a little bit low for a deck that really wants to use its lands.
Yeah, as we had talked about in the template we had just put out, 38 is like the bottom. That's where you really want to start at. So I would almost go to maybe 40 in this, maybe a little more. You really do want to hit your land drops, and then you really do want the amount of lands milled into your graveyard to be, by the time you actually use your commander, you want something to be targetable in your graveyard.
Right. It is also worth noting with your commander can't see MDFCs in the graveyard, right? Because it targets a land in your graveyard and brings it back to the battlefield, is how it's worded.
Yes.
So it needs something that is actually a land on its front face to be able to see something. So occasionally in lands like this, or in decks like this, you can kind of cheat the number of lands you're running by playing MDFCs or playing land cyclers or that kind of thing. In Tival, you really just want lands that they can see and bring back from
good
the graveyard
old-fashioned land.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the deck-specific stats and see what it's actually trying to do. The first category we alluded to already, it's self-mill.
Self-mill, 21 cards in here that do self-mill, and that's quite good. I actually would want it to be a little higher, and you'll see that's one of the changes I made. Specifically, you want it to be a little higher in the low end, so that by the time your commander comes out, your graveyard is already filled with some stuff.
Low mana value.
Low mana value, yes,
Cards,
low mana value, yes.
And repeatable. I think there's a lot of single target, like single instances of mill, which is good, but if you get Bajuka Bogged, then you're sort of blown out and all of that work is undone.
Exactly.
So having repeatable ways to do this is going to go a long way.
Yeah.
22 pieces of recursion, that makes sense with Tival. That's the whole thing. So I think that number being high is great and appropriate. There are 26 cards that allow another card to leave the graveyard.
We love that. That's great. That's fantastic.
That's exactly how we want to trigger your commander. Some of them are repeatable, some of them are not. But that includes like flashback spells and like playing lands from the graveyard, reanimating creatures, that kind of
Just
thing.
exiling cards from your graveyard. Anything that will remove a card from your graveyard will trigger your commander. So 26 of them at a baseline. Awesome. We love to see that.
There are also a fair amount of cards that add tokens to the board that sort of further the idea that this is a go wide strategy. There are 7 token creature cards. The deck is likely winning by going wide and swinging in with a bunch of tokens.
Right.
And finally, there are 10 cards that care about lands in some way, so that enable a lands plan. So it's not a strong theme of the deck, but it's a sub-theme, certainly.
Yeah, it's definitely a sub-theme, yeah.
Those are the stats. We've broken them down. Seeing that like picture of the deck, I want to talk about what your goals were with this upgrade, where you're like, okay, there were some holes I really wanted to patch, and I really wanted to strengthen like this part of the deck. And then, of course, confirm which commander you've chosen.
Yes. Okay. So when I did the playtesting in our office for this deck, I did a few games. And the main things that I noticed it was missing was, as I mentioned earlier, low mana ways to mill your graveyard before your commander arrives. The first time I played this deck, I only had like 3 cards in my graveyard before the commander came out. And then I attacked, milled 3 more, 0 lands from 6. And I was like, that doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
You want at least like 10, 12, the more the merrier, honestly. Like, so you really don't want to miss with this commander because that feels really bad. So low mana ways to mill your deck are fantastic. The other thing you needed is a way to kind of win the game. It has, like we had talked about, Living End, which is like an amazing
Living Death, yeah.
Or sorry, Living Death is an amazing way to just kind of end the game if you're a graveyard deck, because when you have 50 cards and they have 10 cards and you do a Living Death, it's you're probably going to come out on top there.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's going to be great for you. And often when you're using something that has so many things that leave the graveyard, you're probably going to do pretty well in that sense. So that was one of the cards that could win you the game. But other than that, like, it didn't have ways to take advantage of making a bunch of zombies and then attacking.
Because, not a ton of anthem effects, not a ton of like aristocrat effects.
Exactly, yeah. There was no way to, once I had a zombie that didn't have, it's a 2/2 that doesn't have any sort of evasion. It's just like, I can do some chip damage or maybe get in 4 of my commander. But like I said, commander's kind of a lightning rod. You're gonna need a way to end the game that isn't just let's flip our graveyard into our battlefield.
Right, for sure.
So that's what I was looking for. Milling more cards, returning lands from the graveyard also in a different way was also always good. And then also finding a way to finish by going wide more often.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Having those goals in mind, I think it's always helpful to point to the best cards in the deck, the ones that really, really make the deck run and kind of enhance that side of the deck and be like, okay, if we know that this card is good, then like what can we add to the list that also goes in that direction? So let's talk about the best cards that are in the deck out of the box.
Yes. So number one, I picked Life from the Loam because, hey, it's Life from the Loam. It's awesome. If you get this in your opening hand, you're very likely just off to the races. Like, that's awesome.
It's a mill engine. It returns lands to your hand. We already said that it triggers your commander coming and going. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's only 2 mana to actually get the lands back to your hand also, which will trigger your commander to make a zombie. It does a lot of things. It's probably in every graveyard deck you've ever played, and that's for good reason. It's an awesome card. The next one is actually Taval's Judgment, which is a new card printed in this Precon. Taval's Judgment is 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You can either draw a card, create a treasure token, or make a 2/2 zombie druid creature token.
Sweet.
So it is sort of just a second way to activate or to benefit off all the things your deck does if your commander's not out. It can ramp you. It can give you it can treasure ramp you. It can draw you a card, which is fantastic, as we had talked about. So by adding more ways to have cards leave your graveyard, you're always going to be activating this. So it feels fantastic to have on board.
Yeah, I was looking at this card. This seems very serious.
Yes, this is a very good card. The fourth card I had chosen was Conduit of Worlds, which we had talked about already. But again, playing lands from your graveyard, fantastic, activates your commander. You can bring back a threat that is very yucky later on in the game. Just a great card to have. Makes your deck more consistent, making sure you always hit your land drops. So I always love seeing this card as well.
Yeah, Conduit of Worlds is one of those cards that you're like I don't know if I can do... No, I think I can win because suddenly you can play an 8-drop out of your deck and it's out of your graveyard and you're like, oh, that's very good.
And the limitation of you can only cast one spell a turn, which is likely going to be that spell that you use off Conduit. There's a lot of activated abilities in this deck. I think it won't be a problem for you.
Sweet. This deck seems very solid out of the box, but of course we are going to upgrade it to get it in peak fighting shape using only a budget of $50. And we're going to get to what cards to upgrade after a few words from our sponsors.
Cards, so many cards. Josh, what would you say is your most valuable card?
Oh, well, actually, I do have a masterpiece soul.
Wrong! It's your credit card.
Wait, is this some kind of pay-to-win joke?
No, unless by winning you mean protecting your important cards with a high-quality Ridge wallet. Check it out, I just got one. Ridge wallets are sleek and minimalist, and a huge step up from what I was using before. They're lighter, stronger, way more secure, and clearing out my old wallet made me realize how many cards I was carrying around that I just didn't need. Ridge makes it easy to protect the cards that really matter, because all their wallets come with RFID blocking technology to protect you from digital pickpockets. Plus, when I need to actually use a card, it's easy to slide out and tap to pay. As easy as it is to slide away right now!
Oh, that's it, I'm getting a Ridge wallet.
Right now, Ridge is having their once-a-year anniversary sale. Get up to 40% off at ridge.com/command. Just head to ridge.com/command to see their biggest sale of the year.
After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. So please support the Command Zone and tell them our show sent you. Again, that's ridge.com/command.
Whoa, Cinnamon! Hail, hungry friends! I'm Sir Ginger, Meal Ender! I know I can't end every meal. I mean, let's be reasonable. People need to eat something. So instead, I've made it my mission to end boring, unhealthy meals with Factor. They deliver fresh, never frozen meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No more harrowing journeys to the grocery store or grueling trials of cooking and cleaning. Each Factor meal is delicious and dietitian approved, making them the perfect companion to your personal health quest. And with over 40 options each week, spanning from the keto to the calorie smart, you won't have to settle for the same cookie cutter cuisine day after day. My favorite is the ground beef and thyme cottage pie for a delectable and hearty feast. And you can trust my opinion on food, for you may not know this about me, but I am food!
Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
No! Oh, hey everyone, it's me, everyone's favorite inescapable magic mascot, Loot the Pathfinder. I don't need help finding my path through the multiverse, but when it comes to selling my sweet loot-themed loot, well, that path was paved by Shopify. As you might ancestral recall, I've talked to you about Shopify before, but the more sets I'm in, the more people demand cute, cuddleable me's, so my warehouses are flush with plush. Luckily, with Shopify's powerful tools, I'm making sales even quicker than a lightning bolt. They have the #1 checkout on the planet, making sure your shoppers' carts don't get abandoned. Like how I was abandoned in a vault for millennia. Shopify is the business behind the business, powering all sorts of sellers, even the Command Zone merch store. So if you want to boost your sales with Shopify, do it now. An opportunity like this doesn't double strike. I mean strike twice. Haha, silly little Lou.
Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/TCZ, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/TCZ to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/TCZ.
Aha, Psych Rift. Yeah, this deck feels like a 3.
Updating your decks?
No, I'm just sorting them into commander brackets.
Oh, just use ARCHIDEKT. It's the easiest way to get an estimate of your deck's bracket. Plus, you can click the number and it'll lay out the reasoning. It takes things like tutors, extra turns, and land destruction into account, and game changers are all clearly marked. It even recognizes 2-card combos. See? It's saying your deck is actually a 4. It'll be a 3 if you've got Ristic Study.
Huh. Okay, 4 it is.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and check your deck's commander brackets. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. It is time to upgrade the Sultai Arisen Precon from the new Tarkir Dragonstorm set. We're going to get into 10 cards you can add and the 10 cards to take out to get this deck into peak shape for using for only $50.
Yes.
We did it.
Yes.
And let's get into the
The specifics. Specifics. Let's get into the specifics. And I didn't mention before, but we are using Tival, the balance scale, as the main commander for this upgrade.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the first card.
Yeah.
This card is awesome. I do have a couple Modern Horizons cards in here because who knew? They're
They're good.
powerful. Oh, who knew? Ripples of Undeath is 1 and a black for an enchantment that reads, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, mill 3 cards. Then you may pay 1 and 3 life. If you do, put a card from among those cards into your hand. So, as I had spoken before, you want mill that comes out before your commander. And this is one of the best cards you can have.
For sure.
It's going to start filling up your graveyard. It's also going to give you card selection.
That's card advantage.
Yeah, basically it is just card advantage.
If you pay the 1.
You do have to pay 1 and 3 life. So it's not like, exactly the best. But it does also, in the late game, activate your commander. It's awesome. Yes, anytime I'm playing a graveyard deck, so...
Oh, yeah, it does. That's so cool.
Yeah, it activates your commander.
Because it mills them, and then you get to put one from your graveyard to your hand.
Yes, so that's something you have to be very careful about, because there's a card in here later on that we'll talk about that I cut that technically puts cards into your graveyard and you take one back, but not in the same way that this does, in that it actually activates your commander's ability of removing it from your graveyard.
Yeah.
So this is very, very good in that specific sense, and that's the kind of card I think you want to be looking for.
Yeah, I love this. This does everything that we were talking about that the deck needed, more self-mill and that card advantage. And it's only $6. This card's great. It's one of my favorite cards that came out last year. If you don't have a copy or 2, you should get it.
Yes.
Up next, his brother in Modern Horizons 3, or sister, I don't know. I guess I don't know. 6. It's 2 and a green for a legendary creature tree folk. A legendary tree folk. I'm having problems, you guys.
As I thought you said.
It's a 2/4 with reach. Whenever 6 attacks, mill 3 cards. Then you may put a land card from among them into your hand. And as long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace.
Yes. Let me read the rules text for retrace here. You may cast permanent cards from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying their other costs.
But why would we want lands in our graveyard?
You want them all the time in your graveyard. It's so good. It's so good.
It brings things from your graveyard to the battlefield. It puts lands into your graveyard to trigger your commander.
It's so symbiotic. It's amazing. Yeah. It's a 3-drop that mills early. You can basically play it. You can attack with it the turn your commander comes down, which is fantastic. It's exactly what you want. And then it does all this other stuff. It also has reach and 2/4, and it's a great blocker. Like, it's a good card.
6 is awesome.
Yes.
This was a really neat card that it just continues to be really fun to play with.
Yeah.
$7.50 for 6. flavor fail. It should be $6
At all times.
At all times.
You should be able to buy it from Wizards directly.
They're not allowed to raise the price. Up next is my girl. It's Sidisi Brood Tyrant.
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I feel like this should have been just included in the deck, but I feel like it might have, like, at some points outshined the other two. But
yeah, Sidisi's like, you could also put her in the command zone of this deck, and it would probably be perfectly functional.
Yeah.
Sidisi Brood Tyrant is 1, a black, a green, and a blue for a 3/3 Naga Shaman. She's a legendary. I believe now she's a snake shaman.
Oh yes.
The errated one. I don't know if they've printed an errated one with her yet.
I don't think they have.
I don't think so. Anyway, she's a snake now. Whenever Sidisi Brood Tyrant enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards.
Sound familiar?
Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token.
No job on this one.
No jobs.
No jobs.
Just unemployed zombies everywhere.
Sidisi is, if you don't know from the OG Khans block, is the original Khan of the Sultai and was a great character and is still a very good card in quite a few decks. I know you mentioned earlier you have a Sidisi deck, which I played against, and it is quite good.
It's sweet.
So this is basically just another sort of pseudo copy of your commander that doesn't ramp you, but it does a lot of the same things, and it also triggers on enters where your commander only triggers on attack. Yeah. It's quite good. It does all the stuff your commander wants to do, which is make zombies, milk hearts. It seems silly that it wasn't already in the deck, but maybe it was just like it's too close to what it was.
It's also a flavor when Sidisi should be with her brood.
Yeah,
and she's cheap, so pick her up.
Yes.
Up next, this is a good one.
Yeah, Hedge Shredder. This is 2 and 2 green for Artifact Vehicle. What's a vehicle doing here?
No.
It's a 5/5 that reads, whenever Hedge Shredder attacks, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped.
Sick.
It has Crew 1, which is, zombies. We're giving them a job.
Yeah.
They're shredding those hedges.
Put them in. That's the modern day druid.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just trimming the hedges.
That's true. Next time you see your gardener, be like, are you a druid?
Are you a zombie?
They can't say no, technically. This card's awesome. It does, for all the milling that you're going to do, it basically just says, hey, let's just put all those lands into play. So if your commander's not around, I don't care. Let's just do it anyways. It's
We'll
fun.
just have all the lands.
It's just going to have
anyway.
all the lands. And then when it attacks, it also mills, so it does activate itself, and pretty easy to crew. It is a vehicle, so it dodges a decent amount of removal because on most of your opponent's turns, it's not going to be targetable on creature removal, which is pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah, this card's cool. It can do a ton of stuff, especially like your deck is clearly designed to mill and get more lands into play. And that's exactly the name of the game.
Exactly. Yes.
$2.75 to pick up a Hedge Shredder.
Cheap.
Up next, this card was actually in another one of the upgrades. You'll find out which soon. It's that good. It's Smuggler's Surprise. For a single green, it's an instant with Spree. So you can add an additional 2 colorless mana to mill 4 cards and then put up to 2 creature or land cards from among the milled cards into your hand. You could pay an additional 4 and a green to put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Or you can pay an additional, colorless to give creatures you control with power 4 or greater hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Is your commander a 4/4?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a 4/4. This card does it all.
I love this card.
It's so modular. It's so good. It mills you, returns stuff. It activates your commander. It cheats creatures into play at instant speed. In a graveyard deck, this is a fantastic card. And the protection is, like I'd said, Lightning Rod, really good to have.
Yeah, and these spree cards, I think you really want to be able to use at least 2 of the modes, and this one can use 3 so comfortably.
Yes.
And you can do it at instant speed. This is the kind of thing that, like, I think people are learning to expect it. Like, if your opponent is in green and has a ton of open mana, you're like, okay, so like something crazy can actually happen over there, and Smuggler's Surprise is one of them.
Surprise.
Keep an eye out for the big wooden horse.
Yeah. No one ever learns about the big wooden horses.
A horse? Bring it in!
Come on in!
Smuggler's Surprise is sitting at $5.50, and it is worth it. This one's sweet. I saw this in your upgrade and was like, I need to get this for Sidisi.
Yeah, it's $1. This is awesome.
That's wild. Go ahead and read it.
Yeah, this is Lost Monarch of Ifnir. This is a new card from Aetherdrift, Aetherdrift Commander specifically. It is 3 and a black for a creature, zombie, noble. This one has a job. It has Afflict 3, which means whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. It also gives other zombies you control have Afflict 3.
Nice.
Awesome.
So brutal.
It's got more! At the beginning of your second main phase, if a player was dealt combat damage by a zombie this turn, mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
What?
And it's a 4/4? This card does everything.
This is really sweet.
It does so much stuff. It's so cool. It's $1.
Yeah. So it makes your zombies better and gives them this sort of weird evasion where it's like, sure, you can block and kill my zombie, but you're still taking damage.
Yeah.
And then it mills and then it pulls something out of your graveyard to trigger your commander.
Fantastic. That's why this guy has a job.
Yeah, he's got ideas.
He got a promotion.
You're the king of the zombies. You're the first one to have ideas.
But he got lost. They didn't have a map maker, so he's lost.
I love this card. This is only $1. I definitely want to pick up this single.
If I had to guess, this one's going to go up just because like every zombie deck would have this, right? Like
it feels like it has
any go wide zombie deck. It's fantastic. It's great.
Speaking of zombies and Ether Drift, this next one is Curse Cloth Wrappings. It's 2 black for an artifact. It gives zombies you control +1/+1, and that's it. Just kidding. It says tap, target creature in your graveyard gains Embalm until end of turn. The Embalm cost is equal to its mana cost. So you exile a 2/2 from the graveyard and you get a 2/2 token copy of it.
Yes, exactly. So exiling from the graveyard will obviously activate your commander because you're removing a card from your graveyard. Even if it's not going into your hand, it is being removed. It will count that. So it will make you a zombie. It's going to buff that zombie. And it's great. This is one of the things where I was talking about, like, you just need a way to finish games. And this and the previous card, the Lost Monarch, is ways that you can really pressure that damage in. Like 2/2s are one thing, 3/3s with Afflict are a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
So it has some recursion. It pumps up your zombies. It does a lot. It's great.
Yeah, this deck also has Wonder in it. Giving 2/2s flying is one thing, but like the 3/3s with flying is very serious. And when you have as much Sylph Mill as we're adding and that comes in the deck, it is very easy to find that evasion, which is very helpful. We've got some more threats to add to the board. 50 cents for Curse Cloth Wrapping.
Oh yeah, it's nothing. Yeah. Easy peasy.
This is, I've played against this card so many times now, and it hits like a truck.
Yeah.
This is the Wise Mothman.
Yeah. It is 1 and black and blue and green for a 3/3 legendary creature, insect mutant. It has flying, and whenever the Wise Mothman enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. Whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. So, a few things happening here. Let's talk about rad counters for a second.
It's basically a counter that goes on the player, and at the beginning of your first main phase, you mill a card. If it's a land, you keep your rad counter. If it's not a land, you lose 1 life and you lose the rad counter.
Yes.
So it's guaranteed life loss, and the mill could continue depending on what you hit.
Exactly. So the rad counter, honestly, on this card is just kind of icing. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
But the second part of this, whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. As I had mentioned before, you want these zombies to get bigger, and you're milling cards all the time.
The weird thing about the Wise Mothman is you need a lot of bodies to distribute those counters. Like if you're milling a ton, and you hit like 3 non-lands, you need 3 bodies to put 1 counter on to get maximum value. And this deck does that so well.
Yes, exactly. Like you're always milling 3, milling 4. So this is a fantastic way to build that board up in a really scary way.
Yeah, on an evasive body. The Wise Mothman is wise indeed. Only $1 to pick up.
$1.
This is a closer in my Sidisi deck. It's the Scarab God.
Yep.
I cannot believe this one wasn't in the deck. I guess it was because it was like recently in the zombie precon from Aetherdrift.
Yes, yeah.
The Scarab God is $4.50 right now after a reprint. It's 3 a blue and a black. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. That's a few. It sets off alarm bells.
Yeah, definitely.
It also has an activated ability that's 2 blue and black. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. And then when it dies, you return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So he's also hard to get rid of.
It's a lot of text. This is a finisher that's just about in every Dimir zombie deck, and for good reason. It is just so efficient. There's so much text printed on this card that is like, yep, we want this. It's hard not to include in a deck that is actively looking for ways to finish the game, and this is a hard one to get rid of. Exile is really the only way you can kind of get rid of it. And making copies of stuff in your graveyard, awesome, fantastic.
Triggers your commander.
Exactly. When it dies, it does go in the graveyard for a little bit and then comes back, which
Triggers your
again
commander.
triggers your commander. We're doing it, baby.
I love how much this card does for the deck.
Yes.
Especially right now because it is at a reduced price. So
It did
pick
get
up
reprinted,
a Scarab God right now. Finally, one more threat, great for token decks. It's Eldrazi Monument.
This is a 5 mana artifact. It says creatures you control get +1/+1, have flying, and indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. If you can't, sacrifice Eldrazi Monument. So this is a real good way to end the game in a go wide deck, especially if you're making like. I hope you're making 3 zombie tokens per rotation. In which case, sacrificing 1 at your upkeep, you're like, whatever. They're zombies. They're druids, but they'll get new jobs. That's fine. So
how much more dead could they get?
How much more dead could they get? It's fine. But yeah, it's a great way to end the game by going over the top. And then they have indestructible. So board wipes do nothing. Like fantastic. Most board wipes, not farewell, sadly. But it's a fantastic way to end the game. This one is one of the pricier cards. It is a $9 card, so it is quite a big spend. But oftentimes when you see this on the board, you're like, oh, I'm probably going to die.
Game's
or
over.
win the game.
Yeah.
So
this is a big buff, and the flying is obviously just slams the door shut on games like this. $9 for Eldrazi Monument, which brings our total value to $38.50.
Whoa.
Very reasonable.
Yeah.
Very reasonable.
Thanks.
Now you've got $12 to pick up some nice things. Fetch lands.
yes. Oh yeah.
Fetch lands.
Yes. If we haven't mentioned it, but fetch lands are fantastic in
We
this deck.
don't usually touch mana bases for decks
Yeah.
like this, but because of the way that your commander works, I would advise like spending some amount of mana, money, real world.
That's the same thing.
Money on getting fetch lands, because they just make sure that your commander always has a target to hit.
Yeah.
Which is really, really valuable. So buy 1 or 2. They're an investment, certainly, but for decks like this where their synergy is so high, I think it's worth spending a little bit of extra.
Yeah.
dollars.
Notably, graveyard decks are the only place where I also do off-color fetches, the ones I can still fetch one but not the other. If you had a,
Windswept Heath.
Windswept Heath, yeah, you can only get the forest part of it, but it still fills your graveyard, gets a land in there. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you have off-color fetches sitting around doing nothing, hey, toss them in there.
Throw them in. All right, we've added 10 cards, which means it's time to cut 10 cards. It's the hardest moment for every commander player.
It's so
and we're
hard.
We're going to play soft taps in the background as we got these.
We do that now?
10, no.
Oh, okay.
The editors are like, we do that now? No, we don't.
That's cool.
All right. The first card we're cutting is a single-use mill card. It's Grizzly Salvage.
Yes.
So it's reveal the top 5 cards. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. This is weird in this deck.
Yeah, it is weird because it doesn't technically mill. This is the card I was talking about. It doesn't actually mill. You look at the cards, then you put in the graveyard, and you get that card.
You look at the cards, you take from one from among them, and then put the rest in the graveyard.
Yeah.
So it doesn't trigger your mill stuff, the stuff that cares about when you mill.
Right, exactly.
And then it doesn't actually take something from your graveyard and put it into your hand.
Exactly.
It's just, it takes them from, I think reveal is like technically still in your library.
Yeah.
I think it goes from your library
right.
to your hand.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I like this cut.
It's a weird non-bow. Next one is Reassembling Skeleton. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's not even a zombie. You can pay 2 mana to return this to your graveyard battlefield tab, which does activate your commander, but like
you don't have that many
oftentimes,
sack outlets.
Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes you're going to be attacking with someone's like, I'll take 1. I'm not going to let you activate your commander.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not. I'm certainly not going to.
Why would I do this?
You're like, I can block with it, but now I'm like, I'm like looking at ways to actually get it in the graveyard, and I don't know how many there actually
I think they're just
are.
trying to print this card as much as possible.
Sure.
Someone's a big fan of
They
reassembling
really got to
skeleton.
bring down the price on reassembling skeleton.
Yeah.
I've seen one card that sacrifices so far. Yeah, that doesn't seem good enough.
Yeah.
All right, reassembling skeleton is out.
Bye-bye.
Next cut is a new one. It's from the main set. It's Essence Anchor. 2 and a blue for an artifact at the beginning of your upkeep. Surveil 1, and then you can tap it to make a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. Activate only during your turn and only if a card left your graveyard this turn.
Yeah, so this for 3 mana has quite a bit of hoops to do stuff, and it doesn't mill. And sometimes you're like, I kind of want to draw this card.
This also says, like, if you're making zombies, make another zombie.
Yeah.
You're like, I have the zombies.
Yeah.
You do something.
Do something. Yeah, so it didn't feel good enough to stay in the deck. And it is a new card, so maybe there's a place for it somewhere else, but not here.
Oh, there's a sack outlet. It's Woe Strider.
Yeah, Woe Strider is a interesting card, because I had mentioned Escape is very good, but beyond Escape, it doesn't do much other than I can sack all my zombies to scry a bunch.
Yeah, there aren't really sacrifice payoffs in the list. It's just sort of like sack outlets are good, so it's here.
It seems strange. If you want an escape creature, get an Uro or something. Like, Woe Strider, I don't think fits the bill.
I think that is fair. Up next is Lord of Extinction. We mentioned that he is one of the good reprints, but in this deck, he is just kind of big.
Yeah, he is just kind of big, and you don't really have a way other than Gerard to take advantage of that bigness. Like, it'll just be a big beefy. You could get Wonder in the graveyard and give it flying. It's possible.
But that's a lot to ask.
But when people know Lord of Extinction is in your deck, and they see it in the graveyard, they see it in the battlefield, they'll be ready for it. They'll be ready for it.
You need Gerard or you need Wonder, and then it's good.
Yeah.
But even in that case, there really aren't that many sack outlets.
Yeah.
For it to actually do the thing. I agree. It's much better in a deck like Mimeoplasm that can use its beef.
Love it in Mimeoplasm.
Well.
It's so good. So good beef.
It's so good beef.
So good beef.
Up next, we're cutting Junji, the Midnight Sky. So this is a dragon that when it dies, you can reanimate a non-dragon creature in your graveyard, or you can have each opponent discard 2 and lose 2. Again, not a ton of sack outlets, and we're cutting the one consistent one.
Yeah. It also, like, it is a good card. It's a great card. It just doesn't really work with the game plan. Sure, it does reanimate something.
There's also weirdly a lot of dragons on the deck.
Yeah.
You can't reanimate the 8-mana Colossal Grave Reaver.
That card is so good.
That card's sweet.
That card's so good. But it just didn't feel like it fit with our game plan, and it was a tough cut to make. But hey, you do this at home. It's hard, okay? Yeah. You do the cuts.
You do it. I don't wanna.
Email me your cuts.
Speaking of dragons, this is a new one. It's Diviner of Mist. 4 and a blue for a 4/5 flying dragon. Whenever this creature attacks, mill 4 cards. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard with mana value 4 or less without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead.
So it does mill.
And it does remove something from your graveyard.
But it also needs to cast a spell. And this deck it has instant sorcery. It's mostly just ramp stuff. And there's a little removal, which you can definitely add more. But it just doesn't really do what... It feels like it's in a different league. It shouldn't be in this deck. It should be in a different deck that takes advantage of casting really good spells.
Yeah, I see this as a creature deck or a lands deck, certainly not a spells deck.
Yeah.
But it, despite having a few spells in here, it's going to be much more powerful with the creature angle.
Yes.
Up next is Consuming Aberration. Speaking of big...
They keep putting this Chungus in every mill deck, and I'm like, okay, it's good, but this one mills your opponents?
Yeah.
Like, why would I do this? It's going to get big, and then what? And then what?
It's going to be big, girl.
And then what?
It'll be big.
Do more!
No, it's big.
It's 5 mana, do more.
5 mana, big. Speaking of big, a Lord of the Forsaken for black for a flying... trampling 6/6 demon. With black, sacrifice another creature. Target player mills 3 cards. Woof. We're not milling until we have 7 mana available to us. Then you can pay 1 life and add colorless. Spend this mana only to cast a spell from your graveyard. I see. Ramp that starts at 6 mana is not a super valuable ramp.
Yeah, the amount you pay for milling is black, and sack a creature to mill cards, mill 3 cards. That rate's not great. And then it also has the mana you can spend for spells in your graveyard. And there's a few, like there's a Amphimutineer in this deck, so you can eternalize that. And,
this feels more like a CODIS card.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, it doesn't feel right in this deck, but maybe in another one.
And finally,
this is Necropolis Fiend.
9 mana?
It's 9 mana. It does have Delve. So Delve is another way to activate your commander. It's a flying 4/5, which it's fine. X and tap, exile X cards from your graveyard. Target creature gets -X until end of turn. So it is sort of removal. It's pretty slow. It can't do it on the turn it comes out. And it does require you to exile cards from your graveyard, which will make you a zombie, but don't you want those lands you're exiling to be on the battlefield? Like, it just doesn't feel like a good use of what you're getting out of this card. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it's exiling your own graveyard is not the best way to trigger your commander, and we've added much more efficient ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you don't want to eat your own graveyard. You're using that.
Yeah, we need that.
We want to have our cake.
Our druids need jobs.
Yeah.
Don't take away their jobs.
We've got druid zombie protesters. It's the Druid Guild.
Yeah.
Yikes. Too real. You're right. All right. Those are the 10 cards that we are cutting. Smooth things out a little bit. Lower the curve. Make sure that you have a lot more consistency and a lot more punching power in the late game. But after those changes are made, I want to walk through the perfect game with this deck, how you see a game playing out.
I would. So ideally, you would love Hedron Crab turn 1.
Right.
Ooh, that's good. That feels good. You would love to get the Ripples of Undeath turn 2. Oh, baby, that feels really good. By this point, you have 3 cards milled, maybe a fetch land already. Turn 3, if you have 6, that's fantastic. There's a few other cards that can mill that early, but really, you just want to mill. Turn 4, or if you can actually ramp mill. To get your commander out turn 3, even better, because there are a few 2-mana ramp cards in the deck.
Do Hedron Crab, Rampant Growth, and your commander on turn 3.
Yes. So I think that's a way you can check your hand to say, like, I can. The game plan is either ramp commander, or is it mill commander. Both of those have different types of playing the game, but both of them are viable for this deck, which means you have a good opening hands.
Either way, the game plan starts when your commander's on the battlefield.
Yes. So once your commander's out, you're going to be wanting to attack every turn. Don't sit back with that commander. It needs to attack. It needs to ramp you. And then you need to find a way to start benefiting off that, whether that be the Wise Mothman or the Scarab God to actively scry and deal damage, or reoccur stuff from your graveyard, because right now your graveyard might be 20, 30 cards. Like, let's get that stuff back online, get it on the battlefield, make it a threat. And then you could finish off with Eldrazi Monument.
Yeah.
That would feel really good. That would feel really good if I could do that.
Yeah, get that Wonder in the graveyard and start smacking with all these zombies. Speaking as somebody who has, we both have Sultai graveyard decks.
Oh, yeah.
They're scary.
Yes.
And being aware that your commander is going to be a natural thing for your opponents to want to remove. Like, Sidisi doesn't get removed that often, but that's because she's a 3/3 on the ground.
Yeah.
This is a 4/4 flyer.
Yeah.
So it is like an actual threat that your opponents have to deal with. So anticipate that your commander is going to get removed. Try and pick your moments when you get on the battlefield so you can take advantage of it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And as you had mentioned, Wonder, whenever you're playing a graveyard deck, I think it's pretty much common courtesy to let people know when you've milled a card that actively changes the game or will soon. Wonder is one of those cards, like when I mill, I immediately announce, like, Wonder's in the graveyard, everyone. My creatures are flying.
Yes.
You've been warned. Like, this is a thing. None of my creatures say flying. They do.
I know they're not literally flying, but they are.
Yeah, they do. They
you have
do
to
fly.
Imagine.
They're all aerialists now. Yeah, exactly. The hover animation.
Yeah.
So there's a few cards like that. And if you add other cards to your deck, like, just, let people know that nobody likes to get surprised out of the graveyard. Be an active player that has those niceties about telling people that stuff.
I saw a thing the other day where somebody was trying to teach Magic, and in order to demonstrate flying, they put like a D6 under the card to have it hover off the
I
table.
love that.
And then to demonstrate reach, they had the D6 like on the front. So it was like lifted up in the front, but it had the back on the ground.
That's really
so it could
cool.
block it. I was
That's
like,
really clever.
That's really cute.
Wizards, take note. Just put that little cardboard stuff in there. It's cool. That's really cool.
So cute.
That's such a cool teaching tool. I love that.
Yeah. So just building the arena animations in real life.
That's
really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that is this deck. It's very powerful out of the box. It's got some very cool synergies. I think this, like either one of these commanders can be built in a very, very powerful way. To the listeners, do you agree with us? Do you like this Precon? Are there any cards that we missed or any cards we suggested to take out or add that you disagree with? Where you're like, I will die for Grizzly Salvage. That's okay. That's fair. It's a cool card.
It's a weird hill to die on, but all right. You do you.
Let us know in the comments. These videos are always full of people who are building this deck and trying to make it as good as possible. So share some cool tech that you found or anything that you found when playing this deck. Hopefully you can get it for close to the MSRP. I'm a little worried about that. If you want to pick up this commander deck or any of the singles that we talked about today, you can support the show by going to cardkingdom.com/command. You're supporting the show, but it is also just a great place to shop. Whenever I need like 20 cards in one when I'm building a deck, I always go to Card Kingdom because they are going to have a ton of them in one place. I don't like paying shipping more than once. I don't like chasing down different envelopes. I don't like worrying about how it's going to be packaged or how it's going to show up. I know that Card Kingdom are pros over there, so they're going to know exactly what card I'm talking about, and they know exactly what condition I'm talking about, and will ship it to me in that state.
They're the best.
So, we trust Card Kingdom. You can too. And when you shop there, you're supporting the Command Zone and everything that we do here. If you use our affiliate link over at Ultra Pro, you are also helping out. Ultra Pro has a ton of high quality Magic products. You can get deck boxes for your new graveyard deck. You can get sleeves for your new graveyard deck. You could get a playmat that also matches your new graveyard deck. You could make graveyard decks your personality, as many of us have. If there's one card in particular that you're excited about, pick up their new one-touch frames. You can store altars or signed cards or just something that was a gift on your shelf. I have a couple of cards that are gifts, but I don't have a deck for, so it'd be nice to be able to actually like show those off and not lock them away in a binder. You can pick those up at Ultra Pro as well. ultrapro.com/command. All right. We've talked a lot about Magic today, but we want to take a moment to talk about something outside the world of Magic. Do you have a game you're playing right now or a book you're reading or something?
A book I'm reading, yes. Really good idea, actually. So the book I'm reading, the series I'm reading, is a book called The Murderbot Diaries. Anybody talked about this?
No.
It's a book by Martha Wells. I think it's on book 4. They're really short books. I was doing the Audible. They have a dramatized adaptation, so which means like
those,
different voice actors actually do the characters.
That's cool.
And the pitch of the story is basically a Murderbot, which is just a security robot that is programmed to kill things.
RoboCop.
Sort of, yeah. Basically that. Has its governor module, which is the thing that makes it take commands from people, turned off. It hacks it. And instead of going on a murdering spree, it just watches TV. It just wants to watch soap operas.
Sure.
And it's like, I'll do this job, but I hate humans. I just want to watch my soap operas. And it's the story is about like, there's like intrigue and action and stuff, but he really is just like, I just want to watch my soap operas, guys. And so it's just a really cute, fun sci-fi story about this robot figuring out what it means to be sort of human, but not really.
Just exist.
Yeah, it just exists in a world where like you want to do what you want to do, but sometimes you can't do that and you have to protect people who care about you. So anyways, super short books. I think the first one's like 2 or 3 hours as an Audible read, which is awesome. I'm on the last one now, so I'm highly recommend it. It's really good.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes with the details to find it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. We hope it was helpful. Before we go, we also have to say thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone that makes this video and other videos possible. Thank you to Rachel Kendra, Karina Cruz, Sebastian Salazar, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Eric Lem, Josh Murphy, Manson Lung, Christopher Matista, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, Josh Lee Kwai, Jimmy Wong, and to Gaurav Gulati for taking the time to talk about zombie workers.
Happy to do it. This is my zombie job.
I'm a zombie chef.
I'm cooking.
Yeah.
Cooking this deck.
Is that the worst zombie job?
You're probably cutting up your own people to feed others. I would imagine so.
That feels
you got to feed a dragon your friends.
Oh, you're imagining a chef for zombies. I was imagining a zombie chef that cooks for
Oh,
people, which is also disgusting.
No,
Yeah.
you don't want that.
Yeah,
No,
that's
thank
bad.
you.
All right, bye.
Nails.
Bye, everybody.